Comrades, it is time to discuss the revolution, or what could have been a revolution, but for various political reasons was not quite one. But you could argue, on the other hand, that it was one, because of the creation. It is because of the creation of the Weimar Republic, comrades. Okay, so now I've timed my introduction to fit perfectly with that German rendition of the International. We can get to the beginning of.
We left you last time with Germany just being defeated in the war. However, we're going to travel backwards a couple of months to a couple of months, not really a couple of months, a little bit of time.
About a month.
About a month.
Victoria.
About a month to October. I don't know why I'm sadly Australian, but back to October 1918, and we left you with Hertling, I believe was his name, in charge, Chancellor. Bit insignificant to be honest, but he is replaced by a moderate conservative,
Prince Max of Baden.
or Baden.
Baden. Baden. Where is the umlaut on that A?
I don't know. He was he was conservative, but a moderate one. He had democratic views.
Think of him like David Cameron.
Or possibly. Cameron, not a prince, but well off anyway. Anyway, moving on. Prince Max believed that it should set up a parliamentary democracy, but with a monarchy still there. So Wilhelm having powers over the army and but the navy having powers over the army, but they would be accountable to the Reichstag as well.
Yeah. And
the Chancellor would be made accountable to the Reichstag instead of the Kaiser. So almost like a constitutional monarchy.
Yes. Constitutional monarchy democracy. Because of this, already we have structural historians such as Werler describing this whole revolution as a revolution from above, thus rendering the International most insignificant and inappropriate. However, if we carry on, we see that there are other twists and turns in this.
So, moving on to the end of October 1918, we have a mutiny in Wilhelmshaven.
Yes.
And this spreads, and quickly the Prince Max's government has lost control of the political situation. You have mutinies in big ports like Kiel and Hamburg, and we have news of Soviets being established. Again, check out your Year 12 history for
November.
that. In the beginning of November, and in Bavaria. Oh, we are Bavaria.
Rich racist.
A bit racist, a bit snowy, a bit Munich-y. We have a bit of a revolution in itself. King Louis III was deposed, and a socialist, Kurt Eisner, takes over. So it's clear that the October reforms weren't enough. The constitutional monarchy wasn't good enough, and so people wanted an immediate abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm. It's kind of prompted by the fact that by November people knew that Germany had completely lost. The soldiers were demoralised.
There was national shock at the defeat. Propaganda had told them they were going to win, or win, which is wine in French. And just general anger and bitterness at the socio-economic situation.
Income inequalities may remind you of the Occupy Wall Street papers.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. So, in the beginning of November, we have the second, what you could describe as the second stage of the revolution. I believe it's the 9th of November, the Kaiser announces that he will abdicate.
No. Prince Max announces that the Kaiser will abdicate. And the Kaiser basically, he goes, okay.
Alright then. And he leaves to Belgium. So, not all bad, he got some...
Netherlands. He's in Netherlands.
Sorry.
So he got some cheese.
He got some cheese and some windmills. On the same day, it's a bit confusing here, so stick with us. A government is formed by Friedrich Ebert, who is an SPD man.
A left-wing government.
A left-wing government. And Philipp Scheidemann, who is also part of the government, proclaims that it's a republic. But a few hours later, Germany was also declared a Soviet republic. So there's a little bit of confusion at this point. Is it a regular, just bog-standard republic, or is it a Soviet republic?
Can we play the International again? This is a great song. So, yeah. I think it's now time to focus on the almighty or all-important left-wing movements of the time.
Beginning to take power in Germany.
So we had the SPD, led by Ebert and Scheidemann. They had moderate socialist aims, and they wanted to create a socialist republic, but also a parliamentary democracy. Yeah. So they rejected Soviet-style communism. They had over 1 million people in the membership, and And it was the largest party in the Reichstag. We have the Spartacus, led by Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg. Extreme left, they opposed World War I from the offset. And they wanted to create a proletariat rule within a Soviet republic. We have the USPD, the Independent German Social Democratic Party, led by Hugo Haase and Karl Kautsky, and they demanded radical social and economic changes as well as political reforms. So, yeah, clearly they were the left was divided.
Yeah, there wasn't unity on the left. However, Hebert created his provisional government with the SPD and the USPD. So that was the Hugo Hasse and Kautsky lot, and they set up. They said there would be elections and a national assembly, basically a parliament. But there was a lot of problems to deal with. You have all the social problems, the food shortages. Lots of people were dying from Spanish flu. Then you have the fact that the left wing is split. You also have the right wing is providing a problem. The army is generally conservative, at least the leadership is, and they were very angry at the defeat. And the nationalists didn't like the fact that Wilhelm had abdicated. So there's a lot of problems to deal with. So the first step that Hebert takes to sort of try and deal with the problems comes the next day. It only takes him a day. He's a pretty quick guy.
Efficient.
That's what I like to see. Remy, tell us about the agreement that he made on the 10th of November.
So, yeah, General Wilhelm Groener, which was Ludendorff's successor, he telephoned Ebert, and the Supreme Military Command agreed to support his new government and use troops to maintain stability. But in return, Ebert promised to oppose the spread of revolutionary socialism and preserve authority of army officers.
And then 5 days later, Chloe, do you want to talk about this, or would you rather not?
Is this a trade union one?
It was the trade union one.
Yeah, so on the 15th of November, Karl Liebknecht, who was the leader of the trade unions, and Hugo Stinners, who was the leader of the industrial employers, came together, and they decided that the trade unions would not interfere with the trade unions and the free market, so long as he was allowed workers' committees, 8 hours working days, and full legal recognition. And this was endorsed by Ebert's provisional government, because the trade unions were powerful and traditionally tied to the SPD.
So both these agreements are pretty key. We've got the army on side with the government, but with big conditions about not being interfered with. Similarly, big business and big evil corporations and the trade unions made an agreement, so better working conditions, but big business was allowed freedom. So Hebert's government had made two big decisions in the first 5 days, which some would argue meant that their revolution wasn't real and wasn't a proper socialist revolution.
Or others would argue were very reasonable, pragmatic demands. Choose for yourself. It's the second one. No, I'm just joking.
However, such compromises had consequences. And in the final few days of 1918, and as we head into 1919, the left-wing movement, which we already saw was pretty split, completely sort of tore itself apart. Do you want to talk about the Spartacist revolt?
Yeah, so some members, the USPT resigned from Ebert's government after some members of the Spartacist League were shot by soldiers, and it was more an excuse just because the SPD and USPT disagreed about the kind of length of the size of the reforms, but on the 1st of January 1919, the Spartacists formally founded the KPD, the German Communist Party, which really refused to participate in the National Assembly at the time, and it really aimed again for socialism and almost Soviet-style socialism, and that led to the Spartacist revolt of January 1919. The Spartacists decided to launch an armed uprising in Berlin to aim to create their Soviet Republic. And they occupied public buildings, called general strikes, and in general they tried to create revolution, but they had little chance of success. And after 3 days of savage street fighting, over 100 deaths, the Spartacist coup was actually easily defeated, and the leaders Luxemburg and Liebknecht were brutally murdered in police custody.
But Remy, who put down, what kind of corp put down the revolution?
Well, I think it was Freikorps, yeah. Which is a pretty disgusting thing to do to bodies, fry them. No, that is actually, I'm disappointed I even said that, frankly. I wonder if they would be tasteless.
Hey.
But anyway, yeah, the Freikorps, they were right-wing militias, almost kind of returning military men from the front, and they actually had considerable amount of power, and they had guns, and they were able to put down these sort of uprisings.
Right, good point, Remy. So, despite the KPD uprising, the Spartacist uprising, we do have elections in January 1919. They were the most free and fair elections, which I would argue in German history.
Not since, but
Not
like
since,
at,
but
at
at
the time.
At the time, there was a turnout of 82%. That's very big, and crucially, over 3/4 of the population voted for pro-democratic parties. The SPD, so this is the left wingers, but the moderate socialists. The DDP, who are the German People's Party, led by Stresemann. He'll be a big name in future podcasts. A liberal party, would you say?
Yeah.
No, that's the wrong. I'm looking at the DVP, but they're also a good party.
So just to clarify, the DDP is the Liberal Party, not the People's Party.
Yes.
And the
very
ZP,
confusing.
which is
ZP,
the
which is the Centre Party.
Party.
We've covered them.
And they formed the coalition known as the Weimar Coalition.
So that's the DDP, the SPD, and the ZP.
And it's one of those times where we recommend that you go and have a look to see what other sort of parties are around, but we do not have time to cover that here. So,
by the spring of 1919, we have stability again in Germany.
The Weimar Republic had been established, constitution written, you wouldn't believe this, in Weimar. Partly actually due to the violence in Berlin with the uprising.
Yeah. This is where the key debate comes in, but we'll kind of leave that debate to you. Was Aber and the SPD the stability that they eventually brought? Did they betray the revolution? Or was that kind of pragmatism needed? And Remy says the second. It's up to you to decide.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is the third episode. We've had a girl. I hope you've enjoyed that addition.
Yeah, I certainly have.
I have.
I've made much difference.
But we will see. Is this Chloe's final episode, or has she got many more to come?
Who knows?
It's a big question.
Literally only time will tell. But that's just that time's a real thing that can actually consciously think. Let's just get on with
Let's
it.
just end this
So
now
confused.
before we get into too many existential questions.
Exactly.
I hope you enjoyed the episode.
And see you on the flip side. Bye bye.